I was 11 when Ray moved in next door, and within hours, our quiet cul-de-sac lit up with gossip like a spark on dry leaves. "That's the guy from the Channel 6 piece," Mrs. Wilkins whispered to my mother, clutching her rosary like it could shield her from whatever demon she'd imagined. "The one who did time." "For what?" "You know." My mom yanked me back inside just as I was about to hop on my scooter. Her grip was like a vice, her nails cutting crescents into my wrist. "Don't go near that house," she said, not even blinking. "That man is dangerous. He hurt kids." I didn't ask how she knew. I didn't dare. There was something behind her voice I'd never heard before, a kind of trembling rage that didn't come from fear. It came from certainty. For weeks after that, I watched him from my bedroom window. Ray never looked at anyone. Never waved. Just tended to his backyard garden like it was a private shrine: corn, basil, sunflowers in perfect rows with littlewood signs he'd made by hand. No one talked to him. No one wanted to. The mail carrier would literally chuck packages from the sidewalk like he was delivering to a crime scene. Kids who biked past were immediately called back by parents peeking through blinds. Mrs. Wilkins took it to another level. She organized what she called neighborhood vigilance, a rotating phone tree of panicked parents who tracked Ray's movements like he was a prison escapee. "He's walking past the elementary again," she'd hiss into the phone. "Get your kids inside now." There were meetings. Heated calls. A petition. But nothing stuck. Ray had done his time, whatever that meant, and legally, no one could force him to leave. But I noticed something no one else seemed to. He always turned his porch light on at exactly 3:48 p.m., the minute my school bus dropped me off. He never turned it off until I was inside. And every single time Ryan and Chris, the middle school bruisers who shadowed me like I owed them money, started tailing me, Ray would, coincidentally, come out to water his peppers. And like clockwork, those boys would suddenly remember they had something else to do. He never said a word. Never waved. Never smiled. But his curtains twitched whenever I was near, not in a creepy way, but like he was guarding. I started documenting it. I even noted the model of his car, a beat-up '98 Mazda with faded bumper stickers from a military base I'd never heard of. Every day at 6:45 a.m., he left for his shift at the loading dock across town. And like clockwork, he came back around 5:15, head down, never talking to anyone. But no one cared what I saw. Not when they already knew who he was. Then came the night everything snapped into place. I was biking back late from the library, shouldn't have gone, but I needed a book for a history project, and I took the shortcut behind the old gas station. That's when Caleb Fisher and his goons found me. Caleb, already shaving in 7th grade, had flunked twice and once put glue in a girl's locker. As a joke. His pals, Mitch and Denny, were smaller, nastier, and louder. "Well, look what we've got," Caleb said, stepping into my path. He shoved me hard. My books went flying. Little Noah the nerd. Denny ripped up my history notes. Mitch kicked my water bottle into a ditch. "What now, brain boy?" Caleb grinned, yanking the strap on my backpack. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My throat seized. My heart thundered like a bass drum. And then, "Problem here?" The voice didn't shout. It didn't growl. It just cut through the dark. "Ray." He stepped out from behind the dumpster like he'd been waiting for his moment. He looked small. Average. But something in his eyes made Caleb freeze like he'd just seen the ghost of every mistake he'd ever made. "No problem, mister," Caleb mumbled. "We were just leaving," Mitch added, already backing away. Ray didn't move. "Then do it." Within seconds they were gone. Left my stuff scattered. Left me shaking. Ray knelt beside me without a word. His hands were scarred but careful as he gathered my papers. When he handed me my bag, he asked, "You okay?" I nodded. "They hurt you?" I shook my head. Not enough to matter. Not compared to what they might have done. "Good." He stood up. "Go home. It's getting dark." I whispered. Thank you? He didn't answer. Just turned back toward the shadows like a soldier returning to post. And that's when I started wondering, what if the man everyone warned me about wasn't the monster? What if he was the one keeping them away? The next afternoon, Mom was waiting on the porch when I got home. Her arms were crossed, and her eyes were dark with something between fury and fear. Mrs. Kim said she saw you talking to him, she said. I froze. It was nothing. I got cornered by Caleb and… I don't care, she snapped, her voice shaking. I told you to stay away from that man. But he helped me. I didn't ask him to, he just… Don't defend him. Her voice cracked, sharp and foreign. You have no idea what he's capable of. It stunned me. Mom never yelled. Never lost her composure. But now, she looked like someone had flipped a switch and let every nightmare she'd ever had spill out. Without another word, she grabbed her keys. Get in the car. We're going to see Pastor Glenn. I knew what this was. An intervention. He's a predator. Seminar wrapped in scripture and pamphlets. But I went. I sat in the cold little church office beneath photos of smiling couples and hand-lettered Bible verses. Pastor Glenn looked tired, like he'd done this before. Predators don't always look dangerous, he said gently. They build trust. They watch from a distance, insert themselves in small ways. Helping, guarding, protecting. He even had a visual aid. A printed guide with cartoon images of a man offering candy and another helping a child fix a bike. This is how they start, he said, tapping the paper. But he didn't offer anything. I protested. He told me to go home. And next time, Pastor Glenn replied, maybe he offers a ride. I wanted to scream. You weren't there. You didn't see the way those boys looked at him. You didn't hear how scared they were. Instead, I nodded. Promised to stay away. But deep down, I knew something didn't fit. Why would a predator turn his back every time a child approached? Why plant a garden so beautiful yet retreat every time laughter echoed down the street? Why install motion sensors not just on his porch, but facing our sidewalk? I started documenting it. A journal. Nothing fancy, just a school notebook where I tracked his movements. 6:42 a.m., leaves for work. 5:19 p.m., returns, parks outside instead of the garage. Saturdays, gardens from 8 to 11:15, disappears at the first sign of children. Then something changed. It started with the van. One morning, I was sitting on our porch reading a Goosebumps book, obviously visible from Ray's house. A white Dodge van with tinted windows crawled past twice. When it returned a third time, slower, Ray stepped outside, no gloves, no tools. Just watching. The van sped up and vanished. I told Mom, excited. Maybe now she'd see what I saw. But she just frowned. He was probably the one driving earlier. You know how they case neighborhoods. Why would he scare himself off? I asked. Her answer? A sigh and a mutter. You don't understand how they think. But what if I did? That's when I decided to test him. I broke the one rule Mom had drilled into my brain since I was 6, never go through Riverside Park alone. Everyone knew that's where the older kids hung out. No cameras. No parents. Just broken picnic tables and cigarette butts. I walked right into it. And like clockwork, Caleb and his hyenas spotted me. Look who's back. He smirked. Little science project testing his theory? Mitch pulled out his phone again. Ready for round 2? This was it. If Ray was the threat, I was walking straight into his jaws. But if I was right… There's my neighbor. A voice called casually. Ray. He didn't run. Didn't shout. Just strolled over like we had lunch plans. Ready to head home, Nick? He asked. I nodded, my voice stuck somewhere in my throat. The boys vanished like smoke. This time, no tough guy act. No last jabs. Just pure silence. Ray walked with me until we reached the edge of the neighborhood. That was reckless, he said quietly. You put yourself in danger just to see if I'd show up. I stared. How did you know? I didn't, he said. But I know the look of someone testing limits. He turned to leave, then paused. Next time you want to know something about me, just ask. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling. Why would someone trying to hide tell me to ask? Why would he care so much if I was safe? The next morning, I found him in his garden. I walked up to the fence, heart pounding, and said, You said I could ask? He didn't smile. He just looked up and said, Okay. I gripped the chain link fence so tightly my fingers hurt. Why does everyone think you hurt kids? His whole body stilled. He looked at me for a long time. I could hear the lawnmower from 2 houses over, a dog barking across the street. The world held its breath. Because I did hurt someone, he said finally. Just not the way people think. And that's when Mom screamed my name from our porch, full name, middle included. She was already dialing her phone. I was just about to understand. And the truth slipped right through my fingers. Mom dragged me inside like I'd been caught sneaking out of a prison yard. She slammed the door behind us, her voice cracking as she hissed. Do you understand what you've done? He could go back to prison just for that. I tried to explain. That I hadn't stepped into his yard. That he hadn't touched me. That I asked one question. Nick, she said, breathing hard, you could have been hurt. But I wasn't. That's not the point. She grabbed her phone again. I'm calling Pastor Glenn. We need to figure this out. He broke parole. Something about her panic felt off. Not like she was scared for me, but like she was scared of him getting too close. Like he was some living curse she couldn't afford to let into our world. I went to my room and sat on the bed, hands trembling, heart pounding. I thought about his words. Because I did hurt someone. Just not the way people think. What did that even mean? That night, around midnight, I heard shouting outside. I crept to my window and pulled back the curtain. 3 men, angry, older, maybe dads from the neighborhood, were surrounding Ray in his front yard. One shoved him hard. Another jabbed a finger in his chest. We know what you did, you sick freak. You don't belong here. Maybe we should handle this ourselves. Ray didn't yell. He didn't fight. He didn't even raise his hands. He just stood there silent, the porch light washing over his tired face. I understand why you're angry, he said softly. Then leave. Ray looked up, and for a second, his eyes met mine. And what I saw stopped my breath cold. Not shame. Not fear. Not guilt. Just exhaustion. The kind that lives in your bones when you've carried a lie too long. I've never hurt a child, he said. The men didn't believe him. But I did. The next morning, I found a note tucked into our mailbox. No envelope. Just a piece of yellow legal paper in sharp, tidy handwriting. Check the news archive. March 17, 2017. The real story? R. My fingers tingled. I waited until Mom went on her Saturday Target run, then biked 3 miles to the library. I sat down in front of the dusty old computer, heart racing, and typed in the date. Local man convicted in assault on registered offender. I stared at the headline. Read it again. The man wasn't Ray. It was a man named Keith Dorsey, a known predator, according to the article. And the one who beat him up. Ray Parker was sentenced to 3 years for assault and battery after confronting a neighbor he believed was abusing children. That neighbor, Keith Dorsey, was later arrested and charged with multiple counts of sexual abuse following an unrelated investigation. Unrelated? Hardly. The article quoted a detective. While Mr. Parker's actions were unlawful, his suspicions were not unfounded. His repeated reports to Child Protective Services helped corroborate eventual charges brought against Mr. Dorsey. I kept reading. I went deep, scrolling through linked stories, court records, anything I could find. Turns out Ray had lived in another town before ours. A place called Maple Hollow, 2 hours east. And he tried for months to report suspicious behavior. Kids crying after tutoring. Sessions. Late-night visits. Parents who wouldn't answer questions. No one listened. So he'd taken matters into his own hands. He'd beaten Dorsey so badly, the man spent 6 weeks in the hospital. Ray went to prison. But after that? 17 kids came forward. 17. He hadn't hurt anyone. He tried to stop someone who was hurting everyone. I printed every article I could find. The librarian looked at me sideways as I paid for the copies with change from my backpack. As I rode home, the wind hit my face like ice, but I barely noticed. I felt like the world had tilted beneath me, like gravity was pulling me towards something bigger than truth. That night, I sat at the kitchen table while Mom cooked spaghetti like nothing had happened. I spread the articles out in front of her. She read the first paragraph. Then the second. And then her hands started shaking. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You were wrong," I said quietly. "We all were." I half expected her to deny it. Say the internet was unreliable. Say maybe there was another man named Ray Parker. But she didn't. She read every page. Twice. Then she stood up, grabbed her coat, and walked across the lawn. I watched from the window as she knocked on Ray's door. He opened it slowly. She said something I couldn't hear. He didn't smile. Just nodded. Then gently closed the door. When she came back, her eyes were red. "I told him I was sorry," she said, "and that I was ashamed." She didn't need to explain. That said it all. Everything changed after that night. Mom started calling other parents. Some didn't want to hear it. "Newspapers make mistakes," they said. "We know what kind of man he is." But others, they paused. You could see it in their eyes. The doubt. The slow, sick realization that maybe they'd been wrong, maybe for years. Even Mrs. Wilkins, who'd practically built her entire personality around organizing safety patrols, started asking quieter questions. She was the hardest to crack. But after Pastor Glenn confirmed the articles, calling in a favor from a contact in Ray's old neighborhood, even she had to admit the truth. Then came the bombshell. 1 week later, unmarked police cars showed up outside the white Colonial 2 doors down. The house belonged to Dr. Michael Brenner. He'd moved in about a year after Ray, claiming to be a family therapist with a specialty in child trauma. Ran free after-school tutoring sessions. Held safety talks for families at the community center. Even volunteered to help counsel kids after local abuse stories hit the news. He was the face of trust. And the entire time, he'd been corresponding with Keith Dorsey, the very predator Ray had gone to prison for confronting. The police raided Brenner's house after receiving an anonymous tip, a package that included photographs, license plate numbers, and surveillance logs going back 3 years. It wasn't just surveillance. It was Ray's work. Detective Miles held a press conference 2 days later. The material provided by the anonymous source was thorough, well-organized, and documented ongoing child endangerment. Without it, this case would have taken years longer to piece together. We now have evidence implicating Dr. Brenner in the abuse of at least 12 children from the neighborhood. I couldn't breathe. 12. Including Jenny B., my best friend in 6th grade. She'd been tutoring with him every Tuesday and Thursday for the past year. Ray hadn't been avoiding children to protect himself, he'd been avoiding them to protect us. He'd been watching Brenner, not from a distance of paranoia, but with calculated patience. Positioning his garden where he had a view of the street. Installing lights. Keeping track. He'd built a case. Again. But this time, he didn't confront. He didn't punch. He documented, waited, and sent it all anonymously. The cops wouldn't have believed him otherwise. Detective Miles called it the most meticulous civilian investigation I've ever seen. She found Ray in his yard the night Brenner was arrested. I watched from my porch as she approached him with quiet respect. "We'll need your full statement." Ray didn't argue. He handed over a manila envelope. "Everything's there," he said. "Chronological. Photos. Phone records. Vehicle logs. Suspicious transactions. You basically did our job for us, she said. I had time, Ray replied quietly. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Suddenly, everyone in the neighborhood who'd spent years avoiding Ray now wanted to thank him. Mrs. Wilkins organized an apology circle, neighbors delivering baked goods and awkward confessions to his door. Some cried. Some offered money. Some tried to start GoFundMe pages. Ray turned them all down. I'm not here for redemption, he told Mom when she asked if he wanted anything. I just wanted the kids to be safe. 3 months after Dr. Brenner's arrest, Ray put his house up for sale. Not because he had to. No one shunned him anymore. They called him the quiet hero. The local newspaper offered a front-page profile. He declined. Don't make me a symbol, he said. That never ends well. The truth? He wasn't leaving because people hated him. He was leaving because, for the first time in a decade, he had peace. And peace doesn't sit well in the same place where your name once caused fear. Ray moved out on a Tuesday. No farewell party. No parade. Just a quiet U-Haul, a dusty Civic, and a sunrise that didn't seem to care he was leaving. He didn't say goodbye to anyone except Mom. And me. The day after the moving truck rolled away, I found a note taped to the inside of our fence. Written in the same crisp handwriting. Nick, thank you for asking questions when no one else would. You saw me. Not the story. That matters more than you know. Stay safe. Stay curious. Keep asking questions. R. P.S. Look behind the tomatoes. That afternoon, I found a small lockbox buried beneath a carefully disturbed patch of soil. Inside was a key to my bike lock, mine had rusted shut months ago, and a photo. Ray, younger, in a desert uniform. Military police patch on the sleeve. Standing in front of what looked like a dusty building in Iraq or Afghanistan. On the back it said, Fallujah 2008. Some fights follow you home. I did some digging. Ray Parker had served 10 years in military police. His specialty? Investigating misconduct. Abuse. Particularly cases where the accused wore medals, not masks. He'd seen the worst people in positions of power. And when he came home, he didn't stop protecting kids. Even when it cost him everything. And that line from the note. You saw me. Not the story. That haunted me. Because the truth was, everyone had seen the story. The mugshot. The neighborhood whispers. The public label that sticks harder than any truth. But no one had seen Ray. He never stopped protecting people. Not overseas. Not in prison. Not in the suburbs where we called him a monster for trying to stop one. That house where Dr. Brenner had lived. It was torn down within the year. Too many memories. Too much rot. In its place, the city built a small park with a playground and a garden. There's a bench near the climbing wall. On the back is a plaque that reads, For those who protect without recognition. For those who fight when no one else will. For those who speak up when silence is safest. I sit there sometimes. Not often. But when I do, I think about what Ray taught me. That the most dangerous people aren't always strangers in dark alleys. Sometimes, they're the ones who smile too wide and say all the right things. And the people we're taught to fear? Sometimes they're the ones who've already given everything to keep us safe. I'm 25 now. I work as a social worker in child protection services. I carry Ray's story like armor. Every time I hear a parent say, But he's a doctor, or, He's been around kids forever, I dig deeper. Every time someone says, It's probably nothing, I remember the photos Ray took. The records he kept. The hours he spent documenting the truth because no one else would. I still get letters sometimes. No return address. Just newspaper clippings from other states. Headlines about rings broken up. Cases exposed. Always with a short note. Keep watching. Some fights never end. A friend. I don't know where Ray is now. But I hope he's somewhere with less weight on his shoulders. And if he's still watching, I hope he knows that this time, we finally saw the truth. Not the story. Him.